have asked the AG's office to come and brief us on the substance of that letter in effect, and tell us which municipalities and what the issues are, and also kind of help us to make decisions about what the way forward is for the committee. What is clear to me is that the decision that this committee took in the previous parliament to make the issues in municipalities its business as well, it was the right one, because municipalities are at the cutting edge of service delivery, and when they fail one way or another, the people feel it immediately. It's not some hidden agency somewhere. Like, you can get the weather prediction a bit wrong and the country won't collapse, but if a municipality doesn't work, then there is a very serious problem for actual human beings that live in that municipality. So I want to thank the team from the AG for responding so quickly, because it wasn't so long that we got the letter. There is a presentation, members, that has been shared with us, but there is also a very helpful briefing document as well sent together with the presentation. So if you look at your email, there will be this presentation plus a briefing document that has got a lot of the substance that we need. But I will hand over to the team from the AG. If you can introduce yourselves and then take us through your document and other insights. We will open it up to the members for a full interaction, and then at another time soon we will just, as a committee, work out what our oversight program looks like and what we do with those municipalities, and you will please assist us with that process as well. But we'll do it through your colleagues here in Parliament, who are always very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Honorable members, let me greet the Chairperson and the members in the House. And Chair, if you allow me, I would like to introduce myself and the team before we kick off with the presentation. I am Bongi Ngoma. I am the head of audit at the AGSA, of course sent through by the Auditor General Tsagani Maluleke to come and then present on the request that you have shared with us. With me, Chairperson, on my left is Sharon Adams. She is the head of portfolio, responsible for many of the municipalities that we will be talking to this morning. And then on my right, it's Tendani Landela. Okay, thank you so much. Chair, once more, a privilege and an honor to come and present this information in this committee this morning. We will kick off with just the presentation of the slides. Somewhere in the middle of the presentation, we will dive and talk to those municipalities which have got Fs that are outstanding. We will also talk to what we see when they then submit those financial statements in terms of the opinion. There's a trend that we pick up in the opinion. And then later on, we will dive into the provinces, which are the provinces that are prevalent in this area of non-submission of Fs. But then later on, we will talk to the impact, the things that we see on the ground at a very high level. And then we will open up the questions by the members in case they are interested in the details of each municipality. But this will just be an overall presentation that I will take you through. On the mission, Chair, I think we all have seen this slide. Very important that we exist to strengthen democracy, which I believe this session this morning is exactly about that. It is about accountability in action. So we exist to build that public confidence that you were talking about just now when you were doing your opening remarks, where you outlined the importance of the local government and the effectiveness of municipalities on the ground. Okay, I will then move quickly. On the responsibilities to submit the Fs, just high level, Chair, to give you the background. The accounting officer of each municipality, just as a reminder now, has got a responsibility to submit the annual financial statements to us within 2 months after the end of the financial year. So that is the first responsibility. It lies squarely with the accounting officer. However, in the event that we do not receive the Fs within this permitted period, the Act...
Sorry, may I? So usually, and I'm not sure if they're streaming today.
Okay.
We try and minimize jargon. So I know what you mean by Fs, but people, who are listening at home are now trying to understand what are these Fs. So if you can just, maybe say financials.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. So I will use the full terms, annual financial statements. So that is the Fs. And then again, Chairperson, Section 133 of the MFMA gives us, therefore, the permission to report to Parliament those municipalities whose financial statements remain outstanding, which is the letter that we are responding to through your request. Quickly on the accountability ecosystem, within this ecosystem, Chair, I believe you are very familiar with, there are various role players that have got a role to play squarely in what we are about to talk about today, in driving accountability, in driving transparency, in particular driving how funds were utilized by the municipalities, including how these municipalities have performed in their duties. So everyone has got a role to play, which I will touch on later when I talk about the interventions that we have made in this regard and who have we engaged with. So I'll come back to this slide when I talk to what we see on the ground post our interventions. And then on this circle, Chair, I know that you have seen this, these pillars. I just want to anchor something. I think for us as a team, these pillars become very important in line with the discussion that we are about to have this morning. Of course, the first pillar I want to unpack very high level, the pillar of institutional integrity. We believe this is a catalyst pillar to accountability and performance. And in this pillar, usually we assess whether there are basic controls and whether there is leadership that behaves ethically through complying to legislation. So we believe that pillar is critical because it's a catalyst to everything else, catalyst to transparency. Transparency pillar emphasizes then the need for us to have, this is citizen stakeholders yourselves, to have timely and reliable information of these municipalities and to ensure that there's proper use of the resources and whether the resources were deployed in a manner that was compliant with legislation. And then quickly on the accountability pillar, this one speaks to the responsiveness and the responsibility by the accounting officers themselves through them providing answers. They must provide answers on their mandated responsibilities and whether there was swift consequences in the event that there was no performance. So that is the expectation we all have. And then the final pillar being the performance pillar, this one is more about whether that accounting officers did deliver on the commitments to improve the lives of citizens. So if you look at all these pillars, they all talk to one another, the key one being the institutional integrity. And what we see as issues on the ground is that once this first pillar is compromised, highly likely all the other pillars are going to be compromised. And when we don't receive these Fs, these annual financial statements that we are talking about, then the process of accountability will then be compromised. You are not able to hold the accounting officers accountable when there's no reliable information for you to use to probe those accounting officers. I think as we were unpacking these four pillars, Chair, we realized with this conversation we're going to have today, the importance of understanding what these pillars mean becomes very critical because this conversation is centered on all these four pillars of the culture shift. Then on the next slide, Chair, we thought it's important just to give you a background of where we are coming from with this journey of submission of annual financial statements. Key to mention that we have been noticing improvement over the term of the administration, where in 21-22 the submission rate was at 91%, and then it continued to improve in 22-23 to 94%, again continued to improve to 95% in the year that we are talking about. And those improvements, Chair, did not happen by themselves. There was a force behind them, whether it was through the influence that we have had with the accounting officers, whether it was through us issuing the material irregularities in the event of non-submission of financial statements. But there was a driver behind the progress that you see around transparency. And then another context, Chair, on the next slide is where now we want to talk about what we see per province, because it's important to just tease out the provinces that are problematic in this area. And what we note here is that there are provinces that have been improving over the years, but there are also provinces that have been stagnant, where this area of non-submission of financial statements is prevalent in. As you can see on the slides there, Chair, Eastern Cape has been consistent together with KZN and Gauteng in submission of financial statements at 100%. So those three provinces have been consistently submitting and improving over the years. However, the province of the Free State and the Northwest remain the most challenged provinces. So those are the provinces where we normally find problems around the submission of financial statements. We do note just only this year where Mpumalanga regressed from a good record of 100% over the years. Notably, Northern Cape also has been improving as well. So that's what we see in terms of the trend of where exactly is this problem concentrated if you were to peel this onion further and look at the provinces. And then on the next slide, Chairperson, now we are diving slightly deeper and we're teasing out these provinces that I referred to earlier on. You will have noticed that in the letter that was submitted to the Speaker at that time, 10 financial statements were outstanding at that time. There's been progress, which I just want to reconcile back to since that time, since our cutoff time of 31 January. So 4 have since been completed. 4 audits, which I'll talk to just now, have since been completed. And another 4 have submitted, and those audits are actually currently underway. And those 4 that are currently underway predominantly are in Free State, that color blue there, that color blue, Kopanong, local municipality, Mohare, Masilonyana, and then Kells in Northern Cape. So to date, Chairperson, there are 2 that remain outstanding, which have not submitted financial statements altogether. They remain outstanding. And those 2 are Mafube in Free State, and then also Taleda in Mpumalanga. So those are the 2 that have entirely not submitted to this date. And what we see as an interesting trend, Chairperson, I think it's something that will interest you, a correlation here where once they have submitted, what kind of an opinion do we then notice on all these local municipalities? So most of them, as you can see, will either be qualified, they will be qualified, or they will be disclaimed. So we hardly have a case where there is non-submission, but they are unqualified with finding, or they are clean audit. I think there's a story that these outcomes tell, Chairperson. Then, Chair, I think this one is going to be of key importance to you. We've included this slide that, again, deals a bit deeper. It goes deeper to say So what now? Around all these 10, what do you then pick up in the environment around the 4 pillars that I unpacked earlier on? So on the pillars of accountability, transparency, institutional integrity, most importantly, the pillar of performance, which is where service delivery is located. So in all these local municipalities that do not submit, what is common across all of them is that all those 4 pillars are compromised, number one. And if you take a look across all of them, institutional integrity is a common root cause, is what we find as a problem, whether it is the basic controls that are not in place, and whether it is all the laws and most of the laws and regulations that are not complied with. And then we see a corresponding trend of non-delivery of services around these entities. And if you then again go a bit deeper into just teasing out one section of financial sustainability, what we pick up in these entities is that there's a common trend across of poor revenue management disciplines. In most of these local municipalities, as you would know, the water meters, the electricity meters would not be working, the proper checks and balances would not be in place, and billing for revenue would be compromised. Where the billing has taken place, the collection of that revenue is also compromised. So the area of financial sustainability then gets compromised across. Just another example at a high level, again, the things that we notice as common trends around these local municipalities is that the area of asset management also is sometimes not accounted for properly. And this becomes critical because municipalities use the assets, the infrastructure, to deliver the services. So we note that there's lack of poor accounting of these assets. Again, a trend we notice is one where if there are projects that have got to be delivered, projects are not concluded on time, number one. Secondly, if there's maintenance that needs to be done on infrastructure, maintenance is then also not done in line with the norm. So all these common shortfalls we do pick up in these municipalities, and the ultimate impact of all of these things, of course, is non-delivery of services on the ground. So that's what I'm leading to. And then there's an interesting trend as well that we have picked up in the area of grant management as well, where we have noted that, remember, grant management becomes critical to ensure that there is that asset that will deliver that service, or there is that project that will ensure delivery of that service. But what we have noted in many of these cases is that the grant usage is not in line with what the grant was given for. And then there are other accounting issues that we note on the disclosures as well, but that is more on the accounting side, where we are not able to correlate what has been disclosed on the grant itself to how the grant was then utilized. Lastly, on the common trends that we note, Chairperson, of key importance is in many of these local municipalities, there's issues around compliance to SCM laws. Many of them have got this problem, where they are not complying with their own principles, where they are not complying with the principles, of course, that are located in the 5 pillars of SCM, principles of fairness, principles of ensuring that there's competitiveness and that there's value for money for what has been procured. All of these, Chairperson, as you would appreciate, will lead to non-performance or lack of service delivery on the ground. There's other disciplines, of course, that we pick up where the planning for service delivery is not done properly, reporting in between is then not done properly, and then they are not able to track how they are performing on the expectations of service delivery. On all of these, Chair, another trend which we can talk to in detail, should you be interested, is that we have issued material irregularities on all of them. So, anticipating a question by Honorable Mende that says, you've got the powers now, what have you done with these powers around these ones? So we have notified on all of these for outstanding submission of annual financial statements. So we have used our powers, Chair, which is why the trend, as I started earlier on, you would have noted that the trend has been reducing over the years. It has been as a result of the effectiveness of the material irregularities in those instances. And then on the next slide, very high level, Chairperson, what are the common reasons that we see that drive these delays? Of course, all of these are centered in what we call that key pillar of institutional integrity. But most of these local municipalities will have issues of vacancies on the ground, so skills and capacity becomes a concern. I did talk about asset management issues that we have noted. Most of them, as you would have noticed, on the outcomes itself are disclaimed. So there are issues of incomplete supporting documentation. Of course, that root cause is linked in many of the cases to vacancies on the ground. And then on the interventions, over and above the fact that we have issued material irregularities, we have activated the accountability ecosystem, Chairperson, as much as we could. And I believe today's engagement is exactly that, the activation of the accountability ecosystem, which we appreciate. For all these instances, we have escalated to the provincial executive leadership. We have escalated to the premiers for prompt attention and resolution. And we have also made formal correspondences to the councils, to the MEC for local government, and also provincial legislatures. So that is where we have activated everyone who has a role to play up to now, the level of sending the letter to the Speaker of Parliament. And then the call to action, I could pause before this call to action, Chairperson, because this engagement for us is a call to action that has been implemented arising from the interventions that we have made in the past. I think we tick one of the boxes on the call to action, but most importantly, we would also like this committee to assist us with further ensuring that the ecosystem, the accountability ecosystem, is activated at various levels. We would like the other relevant parliamentary committees perhaps to also start to pay attention on these local municipalities that have not submitted, Chairperson. Let me pause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So I'm just going to ask one or two questions and then open it up to the members. So what has your... So I'm assuming that you deal with the municipal manager, the chief financial officer, and so on. Have you had, during the course of your interactions to try and get this process done, had opportunity to deal with any of the audit committees? I'm assuming you did. The Municipal Public Accounts Committee, the mayor, or the MMC for finance, and so on. Can you just give us a sense of what your experience of those interactions has been? And if you can, just also give us a bit of your different experiences in the different municipalities. You don't need to go through all of them because we are going to have to work out how we deal with them. But we just want to get a sense of the responsiveness. Because if it gets to the point where you're sitting here, something tells me there's something broken, like right across that institution. So can you just share with the committee what your actual experience has been in interacting with those bodies and accounting officers?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can I invite Sharon, who has got in-depth experiences in whether there is responsiveness or not when they interact with these municipal managers? She will be able to give us that in-depth response, Chairperson. Thank you.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable Members. And definitely, Chair, from our side, I think when we were sitting with this issue of the non-submission of the financial statements, precisely that coming back to making sure that we've got the engagement. So I think if we, even in our interaction with those municipal managers, if they were present, so the trend that we've seen is the instability in a lot of cases at that level from a leadership perspective. And then from there, we would also have engagement with the mayor.
Sorry, can you just explain? When you say instability, what do you mean?
Okay, so from an instability perspective, it's either the accounting officer has been there for a short period of time, or there's a new accounting officer that we then deal with, which is a municipal manager. Similarly, I think in the detail that you would also see, we would indicate that, for example, where there was issues of systems failure as a result, and also in cases where the CFO has left and stuff like that, that has an impact. But in our engagements, what we would then do is the following, Honourable Chair. We would engage then, first of all, where the accountability rests, because the municipal manager has a responsibility to submit. Then the second line of defence would be with the mayor, where that engagements will be in terms of the non-submission, as they've also got a responsibility in terms of the legislation to submit to council reports if they did not submit the financial statements on time. We would even go further, Honourable Chair, where we would engage with the Internal Audit and Audit Committee in terms of the role that they've got to play from an oversight perspective. In some instances, Chair, with the impacts itself, because ultimately the Audit Committee has a responsibility as a subcommittee of council, and similarly with the impact. So in a lot of cases also in these municipalities, you find they're either not functioning appropriately as those members of the impact. But what we did, Chair, we went further, because I can recall, Chair, when I came to the Free State in 2021, we were sitting in a position that there was financials outstanding from 16, 17 already. So what they demonstrated to us, Chair, a clear discipline issue relating to the submission of the financial statements. And as a result of that, Chair, the engagements then that started to happen on a premier level, where we alerted the premiers within the province to say, there's an issue here with the non-submission of financial statements. We also then went further to have engagement with the MEC of Finance and MEC of COCTA within the provinces to see what role they can play from an accountability ecosystem. We even went further, Chair, where we write letters then to that provincial legislature, where we indicate to them we have not received this set of financial statements. Is there any intervention that they can do from their side? And then we've also issued our material irregularities. What I can indicate, Chair, so what I've seen, where we've seen an improvement, so if we go back to the year, I think 2021, which is not part of the presentation, the submission rate in that year was 56% of submission of AFS. So when we started issuing the MIs and we activated the accountability ecosystem, so I've seen two good disciplines that happens in the prior year in the Free State and in the current year in the Northern Cape, where the MSC in the Free State, the previous year, the Premier called all the municipal managers and the mayors to say, you come the 31st of August with your set of financial statements to this meeting. And if you don't have it, have reasons why not. So you see that accountability driven. So hence we've seen the improvement of the submission rate, and similar last year for the Northern Cape specifically. The MEC of Finance called all of the mayors and the municipal managers to say, come and present your set of AFS for us by the 31st of August. So you always find where the one layer is not doing their part, what is then the next line of defense that you can then raise the matter of the non-submission of the financial statements, Chair.
Thank you. Let me give the members an opportunity. Honorable Mende looks depressed already, and we are just starting. And we are just starting. Can I give the members an opportunity, because I do want us to, during the course of this meeting, to just work out how we going to approach this issue, because it's really important that we step in and try and assist. Honorable Dagmar, I saw your hand. Honorable Mente, I saw yours. Honorable Beasley, I saw yours. Honorable Skosana. Okay, so let's go in that order, please. I think it's a short enough presentation for each member to ask questions and get an answer and so on. I'm sure we'll be on time today.
Okay. No, thanks, Chair, and also thanks very much to the AG's office. I must say that although, as they say in the classics, you shouldn't congratulate a fish for swimming, there does seem to be, you know, from 21, 22, from 91% up to 95. I mean, obviously, it's a complete necessity that municipalities submit statements. I mean, that's a non-negotiable. But there does seem to have been some improvement, and you know, so that's the first observation. But obviously, it's, you know, it's not acceptable. I just wanted to ask. I mean, I know you've given some broad reasons why in the presentation you talk about common reasons for delay on that slide, like audit disputes and senior management vacancies, etc. But this problem in the Free State seems to be really a problem. So I don't know if you could just try and elaborate a bit more without fear or favor and tell us, what do you think, why is it that that province seems to be having such a problem? And Chair, I think, I mean, towards the end, I'm sure you will suggest ways of dealing with this, but I think, you know, some kind of engagement with, I mean, I know the committee is visiting the Eastern Cape on your oversight, but whether it's a visit or whether it's actually calling, you know, the MEC, I think that might be something to consider. And then, being from the Western Cape, I was quite intrigued to see that in the Western Cape, there's 97% in other. It's one of the municipalities that is outstanding, and it says unchanged. If you could just give me the name of that municipality, and also, you know, give a sense as to what in the AG's view is the problem there. But otherwise, Chair, thanks very much. I think we do need to make some decisions about what we as a committee need to do about this. Thanks.
Perfect, Chair. Perfect. Thank you so much to you, Chair. So just reflecting back, let me do the Western Cape, then I'll reflect on the Free State. So the Western Cape, the one that was outstanding, it's Laingsburg municipality that basically had a late submission in that instances. That audit has been finalized to date, and the opinion was an adverse opinion for the year under review. And I think the key things that we've highlighted there specifically is skills and competencies within that Laingsburg area. Specifically, that we normally have a challenge year on year, because that is also one of the municipalities, Honourable Chair, they're not moving the needle. They're remaining, I think, for the past 2 years in that adverse state in terms of the audit opinion, taking into account they're not a big municipality. It's a relatively small municipality. And then from a process control, in terms of the controlling, it should be easier because of the size of the municipality. But the key challenge is the attraction of this proper skills and competency. Although we've seen some interventions that happens, consultants has been appointed in those instances, but we don't see the desired impact of the audit outcome in that municipality. So it's things, I think, from just festering from a control environment that is not operating effectively. So that is in the Western Cape. Then in the case of the Free State, so Honourable Chair, as I was indicating, really in the Free State itself, in my view, it's a discipline issue that is in that specific province, specifically in the space of the MFMA. And as I was indicating, in 2021, from 16-17 financial statements has been outstanding. So I think key for us, and I think some of the common trends that we see, that when we go back then, in majority of the cases when our AG Auditor General had to table her general report, you will see from the prior 3 years, majority of the cases, the outstanding audit that shows in blue is majority in the case of the Free State, where they've got the late submission. And as a result of the late submission, it impacts the accountability cycle. So the key concern that we have then, if those financial statements is not submitted on time, the accountability cannot happen on a council level, that oversight in terms of the oversight report that must be submitted, the accountability from the legislature side cannot happen, which the MEC of COCTA in the province has a responsibility at a specific period of time to report on the status of the municipalities in terms of their performance, and secondly, what the Auditor General has reported. So then from accountability perspective and looking at the cycle, the accountability cannot take place. What we have seen commonly when we look across a lot of the areas, either they are in the disclaimer zone, meaning that you've actually received the money, but as auditors, we cannot confirm this money that you've received, on what have you actually spent the money on. And we've seen specifically, Honourable Chair, when it comes to the area of grant funding, because all the municipalities get grant funding, a common trend that we're indicating, either we're saying this grant funding amount that you've disclosed that you've spent, we cannot confirm if it has been spent for the intended purpose, actually, for what the money was given and spent. And I think one of the fundamental issues in the Free State, when it comes to how they look about their financial information from whatever, in terms of the operation of the municipality to make it effective, there's a lot of them that has financial health issues. So meaning, we see this trend, and I think the HOA has highlighted that when it comes to the revenue management part of things, we don't see then they having proper system in place to say who's actually all our customers in the first place, and are we billing them appropriately, and mainly because of the meters are not working properly or not operating properly. Interesting enough, Honourable Chair, we had a program that we wanted to roll out, especially with the Free State municipalities that we were sitting with. They're sitting with this financial health issue. So as an office, we said, can we not support in different, and even from a national treasury perspective, there's revenue enhancement programs that they said, how can you improve this collection so that you can have more cash available to service the people within your community? When we started that program with some of the municipalities that we've identified, the refusal basically to say, we don't want to do anything about it, because we said to them, if you look at your valuation roll, that which you've done every 3 years, based on the valuation roll, all your customers is there that you're supposed to bill. It's there, because when you do the valuation roll, you need to say, based on the completeness of my area that I'm servicing, who's all my residents? And an expert would normally be appointed to say, these are all the residents. I've done my work as an expert, and I've confirmed these are all the people that you're supposed to bill. So there was this reluctancy then to wanting to do the right thing in those instances where we've said, let's look at what are the solutions that we can support them in a better way. The other area, just the last one I wanted to indicate, Chair, and I think this tells even a nice story when we start looking at the financial statements of these disclaimer municipalities and even those in the qualified zone. So what tells this story specifically say, whatever you've received for cash for the year, when I get that cash, can I clearly indicate, similar when I receive my salary on a monthly basis, am I very clear this cash that I've got in my bank account, how did I spend this money? And in a lot of these instances, we're basically saying, when it comes to how you've dealt with your cash, how you spend your cash, as auditors, we cannot confirm. If you've indicated that I've spent X amount where I have to pay all my suppliers that I owe, or I have to pay salaries and wages, as auditors, we cannot confirm that this cash has been spent for the intended purpose. And we're seeing this trend across. So when it specifically comes to the area of grant funding, where you're expecting When we receive grant funding, in majority of the cases, it's for infrastructure assets. But then you see the disconnect, the money is all spent on operation, and there's no improvement in the infrastructure assets that we see. And that was the reason why that money was given. So I think that is a trend that we see in that specific province, Honourable Chair.
You've got no follow-ups.
No, that's fine. If there's time, I'll ask something at the end just about consequence management but it's fine. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Mende.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to the colleagues and the AG team. I just want to get a few clarities. One, you are mentioning a lot the AFs, so I want to understand the performance audits, because they don't submit the annual financial statements. Do you get the full picture of performance audit, and how far is that in these particular municipalities, and how does it look like? The second thing is, you briefly mentioned the MIs. To what extent is the implementation of the MIs that you have already submitted to them, and what measures have been put in place to enforce? Because as much as we do have this current system that's being applied of removing people when things go south, then there's a new CEO, there's a new CFO, then there's a new MM and all of that. MIs of your current time, we designed that law for those MIs to stick by you until we get an answer, irrespective of where you go. So we should not start a culture of allowing people to get away with murder, because this is exactly what happens in municipalities. People give draft specs for tenders, and then we have a project in Apex that's unexplained, a lot of money gone, then the MM is gone, then the CFO is gone. But I want to understand, at least even if it's a few MIs that you have already issued, and those MIs have never been taken care of, because our problem is that nothing has happened to anyone. And if that's the case, and as SCOPA we have to do something, let's start there. Before we deal with these current financials that are non-submitted, let's go back to the MIs and look for those people. Because this culture of people getting away with murder must stop. That's where we need to start, Chair. Before we deal with any other thing, everyone must account. Then the compliance of the MFMA, especially in the Free State area, it has been ongoing for far too long. There's been Section 139s a lot in Free State. And in particular, I'm seeing very familiar names of municipalities that are there. And some of them are also in the ESCOM issue, where they're not paying ESCOM, they've been making arrangements, but those arrangements are also not respected. So Tabacho in Mpumalanga has been, that's the name that has been in each and every wrong thing. Non-submission to AG, not paying ESCOM. But when you look at projects that are taking place outside Tabacho, and that of monies that is always questioned. So those are the things that we first have to lift them out, isolate them, deal with them thoroughly, so that we know what we are dealing with by the time we come. Now, in the MFMA compliance, another area that I'm interested in for you to clarify is what is the state of the province when you report these recommendations to them, the MEC for finance, because before they disperse the next tranche of the division of revenue, there is a consideration of the performance of the previous financial year. So if the dispersion of funds goes nje kanjalo without taking into consideration what kind of hands are going to receive this money, what kinds of programs are going to be there. And some of these municipalities already, they've been under Section 139, and what were the outcomes? I just need that picture. Lastly is this one of grant funding. Which grants are we talking about that have been utilized? Because we know in terms of division of revenue, municipalities, shame, they are on the back foot because their budget is merely 10% around there. However, it does not justify the fact that it's misused. If it's a salary bill, you know, Chair, I was in Elusigisig, and in the engagement with the community is like, this municipality has got so many workers. The number of workers in the ratio of the community, or rather the population, was shocking. I was like, okay, where is this salary bill coming from for Nyandeni small municipality? So there are those things that in many cases take grant money to pay salaries, when in a nutshell, a grant is applied for by the municipality through a business application where your business plan must be clear as to what kind of a project you're going to do. If you're applying for electricity, it must be an electricity-related business plan. If you're applying for water or whatever, it must be for that, and it's ring-fenced like that. So which grants are we talking that they applied for? Because services don't come to people, yet grants have been dispersed. So let's get all those nitty-gritty details, then we will know how to move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't know if you noticed that Honorable Esak is shifting uncomfortably in his chair because he's from Tabachu. So no, he's hitting home. And this is not a laughing matter, but I couldn't help noticing that you were particularly touched. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Honorable Mente. I will deal with the performance auditing question, and then high level on the Section 139s, because it's an area also that we are interested in as the AGSA. And then I will ask Sharon to talk to the MIs. And maybe when you talk to MIs, Sharon, talk to the MIs that speaks to the financial statements, and also MIs that speaks to the projects as well, wastewater treatment plants, and then landfill mines. So just high level, the MIs in the space of disclaimers, not just only the ones on the financial statements. And then the grant funding, I think they talk to one another as well. So on the performance auditing, Honorable Mente, we have been investing significantly in this area as an office. There's a number of projects that we normally then select in a year to audit. And most of these projects that are not completed by some coincidence are in this area that we are talking about. So this is the area that receives quite a lot of attention and interest. In the report that the Auditor General will present in May, will table in May, you will notice that there will be quite a lot of attention on what we are seeing on the disclaimers around the areas of fraud indicators, around the areas of projects that are not concluded. So there's a spotlight that has been put in this area. But what we've seen as common trend in this environment, of course, the whole value chain of a project is breached, whether from the demand management side, where the accounting officer must make a needs assessment and say, I need this particular project in this particular area, all the way to the supply management sign of this value chain where compliance is not adhered to when they then appoint that particular supplier to perform that service is also breached, all the way to the implementation pillar where this supplier will come in to implement that particular project, but the project is not implemented in line with the milestones, and then no one monitors that supplier in terms of adherence to the milestones of that project, and then the payments are done. Payments are done by the local municipality to the supplier for a project that does not adhere to the milestone. So that is the implementation pillar is not adhered to. Then at the end of this value chain is now the delivery of the project. Of course, the outcome is that the project either is not delivered. So those are the things we have seen in these instances where project is started, takes so many years, project is not delivered for the very same reasons that I have then highlighted. But what is of key concern is it's a question that the honorable member said we'll come back to later on, the issues of lack of consequences in all these projects. Then no one is held accountable. That contractor is not held accountable for not concluding the project. The officials in the local municipality are not held accountable for non-performance in relation to that project. So our performance audit team has consistently, whether you are looking at the PFMA, whether you are looking at the MFMA, the issues are the same that they have been highlighting around infrastructure in general, whether it is the roads, whether it is the water, whether it is the buildings, whether it is the healthcare facilities, whether it is the schools. The trend is just the same that we pick up. No disciplines around project management, and then no disciplines around consequence management. There are also cases where the first contractor doesn't conclude that particular project. A second contractor is appointed to come and work on the very same project. Of course, now the fees or the funds are in excess of the initial budget. And then even that second one doesn't conclude and there are no consequences. And then the third one comes in to conclude, if at all that project will be concluded. And most of the material irregularities that we have been raising rigorously in the past have been squarely in this area of projects that are not concluded. And then on the Section 139s, it's an area we are also very much interested in, and we have been working closely with the various provincial treasuries around. We have noted a trend, I think you are spot on, the honorable member, where a Section 139 intervention is invited, but there is no improvement that is seen on the ground. There are cases where there's a Section 139 intervention year after year after year, but that particular municipality doesn't come out of the dire situation that they are in. But what we are doing now with Treasury, we are working very closely to align on the root causes so that we can ensure that the 139 intervention talks to the root causes that will address not only the symptom of the issues, but the root of the problem. Because in many of the cases, when you start to interrogate the interventions, you pick up that even if the intervention is implemented, it will not take this municipality out of the dire situation that it is in. So we're working very closely with National Treasury. There are other interventions that they are implementing of withholding equitable shares. However, then the law requires them to release the equitable share before the end of the financial period. So there are other interventions they are implementing, but the law that then requires them to release that equitable share, otherwise the local municipality will lose the benefit of that share. Let me then invite Sharon to address the other questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much to you, Honourable Chair. So the one on the MI, so what I will be sharing, because we are still busy with some of the audits for 23-24, but I will be sharing for those that we finalized for 23-24 and the 22-23 ones, and what are we seeing in terms of that picture. So across them, so we've seen a lot on the wastewater treatment plants, where we've raised material irregularity to say, in terms of the wastewater treatment plants, it's not functioning appropriately. Now, we know this is an area that needs urgent attention. This is also something that we've reported to the Department of Water and Sanitation, and for some of these municipalities, there has been some criminal charges that has been put for the there. So I think we can also share that list where Water and Sanitation has basically put some criminal procedures in these instances. What we then also see in this space where in terms of the responsiveness, so for one of the municipalities that we finalized in the prior year was a MI that we raised on the pension funds, that they didn't pay the pension funds over as they were supposed to, as required by legislation. So that was a material irregularity that we've issued. And then we've also issued some from an infrastructure perspective, where we could confirm that whatever grants was received, the money was not spent for the intended purpose. So we can also provide you the list of those municipalities where we've raised those specific findings. There's one case, for example, for Machabeng specifically, that we've raised an MI, I think, a while ago, where this one has been referred for investigation. And I know there was some progress on it where the person was arrested, but the case is then still ongoing. So in these cases also, Honourable Chair, we really try to say when they didn't do their part, then we go to the next steps of the recommendations. When they didn't do their part, we go remedial action. From remedial action, so in the case where there's no financial loss, so in the case where we've got the wastewater treatment plants, the water treatment plants for the landfill sites not being fully licensed, in those instances, in terms of the material irregularity processes, we issue what we call a 11.2. So this 11.2 is basically, we say there's no loss to become in terms of a notice to issue a certificate of debt, but in those instances, we would then involve the key role players of the accountability ecosystem across the board to say what part can they play to assist then with the MI, and also then raising it with the legislatures within the provinces to see if we can get traction in this regard. So we are looking for other coordinated efforts to see how can we make sure that action is taken, because when we raise this MI, the state is already so dire. And it wasn't without warning that we've issued the findings before, and now we actually have to go through the MI process, but you see that no improvement is happening. So in some cases, it's not one of these municipalities that it was quite a sad one where money was received from a grant perspective, like the HOAs explained. That money was specifically for that wastewater treatment plant upgrading. Then what basically happened, there was standing time that resulted in that because they don't have a proper system when it comes to their payments. And eventually this money was paid back to National Treasury. But some work has been done. And I think it comes to that fundamentals. If those basic systems of internal control are not in place and having a proper system, you're then not able to account to say, I've received this grant fund, and you're 100% right, Honourable Chair, through you, what Honourable Menti is saying, there's a 5-year plan that you've submitted. That 5-year plan clearly articulates, I need this money for X project. But then what we've seen, if we now evaluate, based on this 5-year plan, because remember, whatever you've got in that 5-year plan comes back what you've put in your IDP. Your IDP would say to the residents, I'm committing, I'm going to deliver this to you in the next 5 years. That translates into service delivery budget implementation plan, where you say, I've got to deliver on these projects. This is how I'm going to deliver based on the funding that I've got, either own funding or grant funding that I'm receiving, that I'm going to deliver. So what we see, I think, in terms of the trend, when it comes then to the delivery side of these things, so in majority of these cases, these municipalities, either there's one instances where they didn't submit the performance information at all. In that cases, we have now started issuing material irregularities to say, you haven't submitted the information. And also in instances where in the past we're saying you don't have a system in place. So It's instances where you're saying to the community, I'm going to deliver on this project. So you're going to build, say, 10 houses. Now, as auditors, if we want to confirm, was there 10 houses built, we cannot confirm it because the information and the evidence doesn't correlate. And that's where you find the record management. There's a basic fundamental control with the record management not being in place, and hence now you cannot confirm. And when you go to the project itself, because we also visit project, you cannot see that the work has been done on that specific project. And I think precisely, Honourable Chair, what Honourable Ment is saying, it comes to then a lot of the money is then being used for salaries and wages and not for the intended purpose for service delivery. So where the accountability cycle needs to be closed, because from the national perspective, so the grants that we're seeing, it's either, for example, for upgrading of human settlements that grants is received, for infrastructure, upgrading grants is received, for water and sanitation specifically, there's specific grants that's received. So in those instances, when we then confirm to say there was a 5-year plan, there was conditions attached, what you must deliver, and now we want to confirm. I think in all of these municipalities cases that we've got, these 10 that we've got, we couldn't confirm that that grant was spent for the intended purposes. Or it's a case, the grant money that's left either gets paid back, and then the service delivery doesn't happen to the citizens. And I think just to connect the dots, because where then as auditors we find the disconnect. So when we connect the dots, so from a performance information, there's a project that's identified. But remember that project that has identified as you're building the project. So if one of your things was you're going to build a dam, as you're building this project, it is put into your work in progress until the project is completed. So as auditors now your asset base needs to increase. Now when we want to confirm, okay, whatever expenditure you've disclosed in that work in progress, to ultimately recognize, to say, when I've completed this dam, this is the total amount this dam is going to cost me. And then you find yourself year on year, there's amount sitting in work in progress. For 10 years, the same amount is sitting in work in progress. So when we want to then confirm, actually, where's this dam, then it's non-existent. And that's why you find, so this is also something we're carefully looking on and sitting with the qualification on the asset management, as the HOA has alluded to, because then you said you spent 10 million. When we want to confirm, okay, where's the 10 million, then we cannot see that. So that amount that you've got, there's 10 million, is not a real representation. And that is what we find sometimes in the challenges. Then in terms of the 139 interventions, so what we have seen, a lot of cases happen that when it comes to the actual actions that has to be implemented, there's many, many actions that has to be implemented. So first of all, looking at, and it comes back to the funding, because I think the legislation is clear to say when there's financial issues, there's a mayor that's got a responsibility, from the province there's a responsibility, from national there's a responsibility. So what we find a lot of times with the Section 139 interventions, a lot of times some of that intervention doesn't give you the intended impact. So then in terms of the action plan that has been developed is not then clear enough to get the municipality out of the state that they are. Or it's a case, so what we find sometimes with the issue of malicious compliance, municipalities is not supposed to prepare unfunded budgets. It's clear in the legislation. Now, just to comply, they prepare the budget, but they don't show the true expenditure for that budget. So then it passes the test, it's not unfunded. But when we come now to the actual, and hence the HOA was mentioning, that's why we're sitting with this big amounts of unauthorized expenditure that they basically accounted for, because in the first place, when it comes to their budget process, having to disclose both cash and non-cash items, you have to make sure whether you basically have to now make the assessment to say, this debt that I've got, when I assess it now, is it still worth 100 Rand? Or should it be 50 Rand? And that's an assessment that you've got to make on a yearly basis. And if it's not 100 anymore, you must write down that 50 Rand, and that's where we're talking about the depreciation, to say that amount then a lot of times we find not calculated appropriately, or in instance when you're not recovering from your customers what you're supposed to. So you've basically said, in my budget for revenue, I was going to get 10 million. but now I'm only getting 2 million. Then you've got to now write that off to say, I'm not going to collect what I anticipated to collect. And then also in the spending of bulk purchases. So that's also where we find quite a bit of unauthorized expenditure when it comes to the spend. And it comes back, I think, just connecting the dots from the 139 intervention. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Do you find that, and I mean, I know you've got to work with actual evidence, but do you find that the patterns are so recurring that it's possible that officials know when they prepare the budget, it's to just get it over the line, and then they're going to reorganize the expenditure once the budget has been passed, because, well, they know they're not going to collect enough revenue. They know what's broken, and they do the same thing every year. So you get the budget over the line to try and somewhat align with your performance plans and that sort of thing. But once it's been passed, then the movement of the money into areas where it's not initially intended for begins. Because I'm trying to think about what a chief financial officer or somebody would kind of be thinking when people say, I need X amount for Y, and he says, no, it's not available. But don't worry, once it's been through council, we will then sort you out. Have you got a sense that something like that might be happening?
No, thank you so much, Honourable Chair. So what we have definitely seen in the system in terms of when we just sit back and look at the pattern, so from the municipal space, I think, so first of all, you would deliver your budget as you 100% say, Chair. Then there's another process that you've got where you look at your adjustment budget process. So if we maybe, and you're 100% right in say the pattern that we see. So the key thing that we wanted to start unpacking to say, in terms of the budget process, for your budget to be approved and submitted, it must be unfunded. But there's other processes in place then to say, there's, in terms of the legislation, it says in the MFMA section 71, on a monthly basis, you're supposed to do this report to do your comparison with budget versus actual. This report goes to the provincial treasury and the national treasury then on a monthly basis to say, based on what I've received, did I spend? The other key thing in Section 71 reports, it says the MEC of Finance has a responsibility on a quarterly basis to do a consolidated report of your actual versus budgeted and must table it at provincial legislature. So there's another opportunity now where you look from a consolidated perspective to say, based on what I've submitted, that I spent according to the purpose. Then in terms of the adjustment budget process, which is the 6-monthly assessment, you get another opportunity then to review this. So you're 100% right, Chair. What we've seen a lot of time was probably to say, I need to have an unfunded budget, let me submit it. And that is the story, I think, that the unauthorized expenditure is telling me, because year on year, you're seeing that balance growing and then you're seeing that trend. The unauthorized expenditure is not getting less, it's getting more, which could be a symptom of you not then preparing your budget appropriately, that you're sitting with this issue of unauthorized expenditure. And then also then linking back to the performance information that you said, Chair, you were indicating, based on this budget, these are the projects that I'm going to deliver, then those things are repositioned and then spent on things for maybe prior year expenditure in the current year, that then has that intended impact.
Can I
Thank you.
add?
Honourable Beasley? Oh, sorry, you've got a follow-up. Okay, please go ahead.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, AG. Now, I just want some more elaboration on certain aspects. One, when you are dealing with those performance audits and you identify all these shortcomings and wrong things that have been done, what steps then do we take to find people and pin them into their MIs? And then secondly, how do we then avert, if, for a lack of a better word, a council resolution that clears your MI? Because that's the biggest problem that we're dealing with in municipalities. Once the MIs become serious, and the MIs are going to deal with comrades, then we take that whole expenditure, we subject it to the council under some pretense of having been investigated. How do we avert such shortcomings? Because the system, we are trying to lock it so that it serves us and make sure that when you get financials, they are in par with performance. So that grant funding and that unauthorized expenditure, which now is a new system and a culture that's been cultivated in municipalities in order to access new money with old performance. And at the end of the day, that same unauthorized, when you look at it in the following year, the performance of that unauthorized is zero. Yet we have taken new money to pay for old expenditure, but there is zero service delivery. Then the next year, that same material irregularity of zero performance gets subjected to council. Now here is a problem. You don't have a say on the investigation of the municipality. You don't have a say on legislators or councillors sitting there in majority, passing an irregularity under false pretense of investigation, 10 million paid for a dam not built, nothing done to the service provider, nothing done to the CFO who signed, who continuously paid, because money to pay for any project comes in tranches. You do phase one, you bring your invoices, you get paid. There was no monitoring, nothing happened. A second service provider gets appointed. It does the foundation again. The first service provider, nothing was done to them. Yet, that investigation, when it gets to council, it passes. So that's the dilemma we're facing. I thought you were going to say that when I asked, at what point do you address? Because that's actually what takes us back. You do all what you do, you present it to us, but the council undoes everything. It just passes a report and it says council resolution passed, condoned, 7 billion, condoned. MEC of Finance then gives us another money because the council have condoned the investigation, they are satisfied, you can't say anything. And you must be able to tell us that, how do we then bridge that gap? Because that's where our problem is, where municipalities are concerned. Then the second thing is the pension funds municipalities. Are those ones, Chair, we need a list. You need to not say no more on that one, they can't condone it anyway. Just give us, because imagine if you die today, you are a municipality worker. When your kids go to the pension fund, they fund no money. And then a CFO has taken your money to pay for spookies that are in a payroll. No, that one, we just need a list, Shem. No, there's nothing much you can do. Unfortunately, even yourselves, you can't perform miracles there. It is what it is. They just need to tell us where is the money, and it must be found. The last thing is this section 139. Chair, I've seen, you see, Mfuleni municipality, Gauteng, has been under section 139 a lot and all of those things. And there's nothing happening. Shem, there's nothing happening. You don't find it on this list. You know why? Because people then don't spend, and then they get a better audit because the balance sheet is balancing. Nothing was done. So what happens in the 139s, administrators get there, then they shift everything to the province, or province authorized, province this, province that. Then nothing gets done in their budget. It doesn't get touched. It just gets to be returned. And as much as we penalize returning, but it doesn't look like it's the worst criminal offense, because that is illegal. To take money of people that's meant for service delivery and you just take it as it is and you give it back to National Treasury, that's the worst form of treason. You're killing people, and we, from the perspective of AG, we see it like, no shame, you are innocent, you didn't steal, you just took it back. So that's another dilemma that plays at Section 139. Administrators don't want to touch anything. They're like, this is a mess. I'll just be here to put things together and just observe, but I ain't touching no cent. I ain't doing no projects. I ain't delivering anything. Last thing on the performance, AG. I don't know how possible this is. Out of these municipalities you have identified, I think in the near future we have to find a way of breaking down these KPIs. Mafube, or rather village municipalities, they don't do trash collection. They don't do sewers because there's no sewerage in rural. They don't do water recirculation. It's done by a district. At most, it's just national. So the basic services, they don't do electricity. They don't fix potholes. It's not their mandate. In many cases, it's just gravel roads, and they don't re-gravel. So what is it that they do, which at the end of the day, the money is spent, yet these basic services that township municipalities are providing, you can see where their budget goes to. You can see what people are employed for. When you are employing people in a rural municipality, 400 workers, yet they don't do trash, they don't do sewer. It's generally like that because there's no sewer, there's no water reticulation, there's no trash bins, there's no trash collection, nothing of that sort. There's no electricity. So what is it that they do? What are we measuring them against when we get to this level? To say, yes, you have performed, except this salary bill, because everyone is just taking money to salary bill. But what do the workers do? What is it that they are employed to do? Employing people is a good thing, but what's the output? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. On the pension fund, we do take note that you are keen on getting the list, so we will honor that request, Chairperson. I think it's easy. And then on the write-offs, I think you are quite spot on there. I will invite Sharon to speak more on it because she recently had one instance of a write-off that she had to deal with slightly differently. It's a new trend, Chair, that we are also picking up, where the accounting officers have got a responsibility to investigate the irregular expenditure and deal with it. Either they must improve the control environment or do the investigations and then implement consequences based on the outcome of that particular investigation. But exactly what Honorable Mende is saying, we are picking up a new trend now where there is a write-off or condonement of these irregular expenditures by councils. In some of the cases that we have spotlighted, where an investigation was maybe not satisfactorily done, but condonements were then implemented. So in that particular case, we have referred the matter to National Treasury, but I'll allow Sharon to speak to one of the matters that she had to deal with. Because once the council condones, it's only the court that can reverse that decision. So we had consulted significantly on this matter because it concerned the Auditor General And we had to go back and do our own internal technical consultation. And the outcome was that once it has been done by council, it can only be reversed by the courts. But then what is our responsibility and what is your responsibility? So that's what we have located our responsibility as to refer then the matter to National Treasury. You'll speak about the SIU. I don't know whether we also referred the matter to SIU as well, but it's a new trend that is also beginning to concern us, specifically on the irregular expenditure, because the material irregularities, they've got a long process on their own. They don't get written off at council level. It's only the irregular expenditure write-offs or condonements. I think I'll allow you then to also speak. I like this question by Honorable Mende on the rural municipality. I'm also from Hlonhlo, a municipality, so I'm keen to maybe if you can unpack one in Free State that is more rural. What is it that, is it Maluti Pofong perhaps? What is it that they then do? Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Honourable Chair. Then through you. So maybe the one on the irregular expenditure or unauthorised, fruitless and wasteful expenditure write-off, because that is one of the things that was really bothering us. I think one of our municipalities in the Northern Cape specifically that we've seen this trend. So when we actually back went to the legislation in terms of Section 32(2), it clearly articulates that council must investigate. It said may, it said it must investigate before it writes off. So as part of the work that we do from a consequence management perspective, we need to make sure if you're indicating you've investigated, what have you actually done? So then as the team, when we've asked the evidence from the municipality, okay, it says council must investigate and then the write-off can happen after if you've identified nobody to be held accountable. So we said, now give us the proof that you have investigated. And then when the proof had to be given, it wasn't substantial work that was done at all. And as a result of that, then what we then did, we raised a non-compliance in the audit report to say that in terms of in terms of 32, you have not complied because council did not investigate this matter. Then as the HOA has indicated, then we've also reported that matter to the National Treasury in this regard, because from their side also they've sent clear guidance out to say when you're actually dealing with the unauthorized, fruitless and irregulars, this is the process and the frame that you can follow. So if things are really of a technical nature, there was maybe a tax clearance not received and you subsequently receive it, those are some of the things that you can deal with, but not in instances where there's clear fraud and corruption that occurred and you basically write off this expenditure. So, Honourable Chair, to you, this is definitely something that gets in our attention and focus. The only challenge that you have in that year, only that the write-off occurred, you can actually have that non-compliance. Then the next year it basically falls away. So we are then from the AG's office also looking at in those instances for referral, because if you even go to the section further, it talks about when there is a criminal conduct and that they've got a responsibility to refer these matters. So that is something from our side that we are looking at, but we've started now reporting it to National Treasury to say this thing must be looked at much, much deeper, because you're 100% right, then we're going to perpetuate the problem year on year and sitting with exactly the same thing. Then in the area of the performance of the municipalities as such, and especially a small municipality. So if I can maybe cite the one of Mafubi, because that is the one also where we're waiting on the financial statements of the 2023-24 year that we have not received as yet. So if we go back to when we specifically look at the service delivery matters and what is sitting there, the things that we've reported. So and I do believe the root of the problem is there's nothing wrong with the legislation, because the legislation is very clear. When you have to put these documents together, there's a process that you follow from the Municipal Systems Act. It's very clear. So important to note, when we were then looking specifically at Mafubi and we're looking at the performance information side of it. So first of all, across the board, we've got findings where we said, actually, when it starts with your planning processes, when you have to plan what are you going to deliver on, your systems are not in place. You're not planning properly to say this is what I'm going to deliver, this is how I'm setting my targets, this is how I'm setting the indicator. Secondly, when we look at the targets and indicators of what is supposed to be delivered, it's then so difficult to measure it. It's because it's not clear enough what actually are you going to measure. So if you indicated you've got to refurbish the gravel road, it's not clearly articulated. If I'm saying I'm going to refurbish, so what you'll find on the SD bit is it will say refurbish gravel road. But it doesn't indicate which gravel road I'm going to refurbish, which street I'm going to refurbish. So that then in itself is then the fundamental problem. So now when you have to connect the dots to say, this is the gravel road that you cannot confirm it, then as auditors we cannot confirm it. And then it comes back to say you don't have the processes then in place to say, when I collect this information, how am I going to collect the information in the first place? And that in itself then is a challenge. The other thing that we're also seeing, when they do the variance explanations, because remember this is a responsibility where they've got to indicate in their audit report, I'm going to deliver X. If I didn't deliver X, why didn't I deliver? So as auditors, when we want to confirm to say, oh, I had to reprioritize my budget, and now we want to confirm then we can't get the evidence to confirm, okay, you didn't deliver on this because you had to reprioritize your budget, or the money that goes to for refuge removal that now go to water and sanitation. And when we want to connect the dots, we cannot confirm it. So a lot of times, even the explanations that's given of the non-delivery on the underperformance as auditors, we cannot confirm it. Where I do believe in this, what we also started doing specifically on the performance information side, because this was a key concern for us. So as the MEC of COCTA in the province, they've got a key responsibility when it comes to the performance information of municipalities. So the IDP, the SD-BIPs comes to their table for approval. So the key thing that we were advocating for, and I think in our messages, even in the previous year, to say, when these IDP and SD-BIP come for your approval, because service delivery from one municipality to another is very similar in nature. So why are you not supporting the municipalities better so that they can formulate their targets and indicators better across board, especially for those that's getting it right, for the ones that's not getting it right. So there also we believe there's a key fundamental role from the MEC of COCTA side that they can play in terms of their oversight process with the performance information and how that information is then put together. So I do believe if the key role plays in the system, if they're not all playing their part, and I mean, if we go back to the legislation, even when it comes to the 72 reports, and the 72 reports deals with the mayor's responsibility, that on the 6-monthly basis, that mayor of that municipality must actually say, based on the 6 months that I was supposed to deliver, what did I deliver? And have to then table a detailed report to council. So a lot of times then, what we find in the credibility of this report that goes to council is not credible. Decisions then is made not on credible information, because clearly when we come to connect the dots, when we audit the performance information, we find that we don't have the evidence. So how can you say you've delivered to council actually when we come and audit? But the root cause of the issue is when it comes to the performance information. So the trend that I've also seen from a human resource side, the findings, the non-compliance that we've reported from the human resource side. So as we know, there's a staff regulations that came out in 2021, very good document, brilliant document to say, for the different levels of skills that we require in the municipalities, these are the minimum competencies, and goes in detail. But then we see 56, 57, there's no performance agreements that's being signed at all. So clearly, if those performance agreements are not signed in the first place, how are you going to make sure they're going to deliver on the performance of the municipality? So that's a trend that we're seeing. The second trend that we see, there's no clear job descriptions. So I, being an official there, if I'm not clear what my role and responsibility is there, I'm getting paid for not doing what I'm supposed to do. So that's the second trend that we see. And then the third trend that we see, there's no performance management system that's entrenched throughout the municipality to keep people accountable for what they are supposed to do, for what they are supposed to deliver. So that's also in the area of non-compliance finding that we've seen that then has a direct correlation to the work from a service delivery perspective that we're seeing. Happiness?
Thank you very much for that detail. response. And I'm grateful for this interaction, Honorable Member, because I'm going to try and frame my comments very carefully here. But the research team and myself and the secretary went to a meeting of all the SCOPA and the provincial accounts committees. And I must say, when I reflect on the deliberations therein and the various perspectives taken by the different provinces, the provinces where there is a problem are completely unsurprising, given the specific discussions that we had. I'll just put it like that. Where the province appeared to have people with a strong oversight mentality, you have fewer problems at municipal level. And when this came through, that ages later came through, I was totally not surprised at all, just in terms of where much of the problem is. Honorable Beasley, that's your turn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the AG for your presentation. So mine's just going to just start off with the comment at first. I just think these municipalities just don't care. They just don't care. And you can see it going through to service delivery. They just don't care. And when there's financial chaos, it means there's fraud and corruption going. So there's no incentive for them to actually stop it. And the only way we're going to get incentive for them to stop it is either the AG issuing certificates of debt, and I'm just wondering how many you've submitted. And one of the criticisms that I'm starting to see develop is just the lack of certificates of debts issued by the AG. Because when you start hurting people's pockets and other people start seeing people's pockets hurt, it sets an example. If people get away with this chaos and there's no responsibility, they're just going to keep on doing it. And then the other big thing is I'd just like you to talk about the lack of consequence management, because a big concern for me is all the key role players have got their own skeletons. So they're not going to institute disciplinary hearings if they've got their own skeletons. And that is a big concern. And I think it's time, Chair, we actually started, and we touched it briefly with SIU for independent disciplinary that are totally independent from. So I'd just be interested to know how many disciplinary hearings have actually been held in these municipalities and how many people have actually been dismissed. And I'm sure the answer is probably very few. And then on slide 7, you said KZN had 100%. Coming from KZN, very happy to see that. But then I see Umzinduzi had so I don't get 100%. So, so I don't know if there was a mistake in your actual slide. And then the two that didn't have submitted their annual financial statements, what is the update on those at the moment? If you can just elaborate. And then have you engaged with the National Minister of COGTA on these issues at this stage? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chairperson. Maybe let me start with the easier one, the Msunduzi in KZN. So there was a full-on submission by KZN, but it was the conclusion of the audit that delayed. So Msunduzi was concluded in January. It has been concluded to this date, but they had 100% annual financial statement submission. And then on the issue of the lack of consequences, I've just asked the team now to just perhaps present the previous slide on what we are seeing on the impact of the MIs, if you can find that slide, because there's been a number of MIs that have been raised by the Auditor General in the past around the MFMA environment. And there's different things we are seeing coming out of the impact itself. There's a number of MIs that have been addressed. Not inspiring, but there is a number that has been addressed. There is some that are sitting in the appropriate action element, meaning they are in the process of being addressed. And then there's a number of them that we have elevated, meaning the Auditor General has invoked her powers to elevate the notice itself to the recommendation stage, because once the accounting officer does not respond to our notice, we then are allowed by the powers to invoke that notification to a recommendation stage in the audit report. That is where you are able to track what is sitting in the audit report of those municipalities. You'll be able to track that there was a material irregularity that has now been elevated to a recommendation. Again, upon no responsiveness or no action by the accounting officer, then the Auditor General elevates her powers to remedial actions. So there's a number of them that again are sitting in the remedial actions stage. On the COD, maybe I could just say let's watch the space, Honorable Chair. I will not preempt what the Auditor General will present in the coming sessions, but there is a process where there could be a translation of a COD. But again, there is a process that must be respected. Perhaps let's just allow that particular process to be respected. And once the COD has materialized, it will be presented by the Auditor General. Yeah.
COD being?
A certificate of a debt. A certificate of debt, Chair. So if you can just beam up that slide with your permission, Chairperson. It was not part and parcel of the slides that we had presented, just to show the overall impact. There's many things that are actually taking place within this slide, but in terms of the number that was presented, when was this? Do the previous year one. Let's do the previous year's one. Yeah. Yeah, I think let's not beam up the most recent, because the Auditor General will deal with the most recent. Let's just deal with the one that was presented in the previous year. Just the overall, what do we see? Because the honourable member is keen on, is there disciplinary action taken or are investigations being done on these material irregularities? Yeah. Okay, maybe you can deal with that question while we beam up the slide.
Perfect. Honourable Chair, through you, I think one of the questions was what audits are still ongoing there, and have we finalised some of it? So I can indicate there's two still that we're waiting on financial statements that's not submitted. It's the entity, the branch local economic development, and then Mafubi. So those are the two that we have not received the AFS yet to date. So the ones that is outstanding, that we have received the financials, but the audit process is ongoing, as Kopanong, Mogare, and Maslionana, and then Case. So those are the ones that we're still in the audit process now, but we have received the financial statements. Then for the others, basically, that we've got on that notes, it has been finalized. It's Machabeng, that was qualified, Msunduzi, that was also qualified, Maluti Pafong, that was basically disclaimed, and then the one in the northwest that we've got adverse. So those are the ones that we are. So essentially 4 finalized, 4 audit in progress, and 2 didn't submit. That makes the 10 up.
Thank you. Honorable Skosana. I hope you're going to offer to to be seconded. Honorable Skosana has experience at at municipal level, so maybe he's rising to offer himself to go and change the situation in one of these municipalities. Please go ahead, sir.
No, not at the moment, Chair. No, thank you very much, and good morning to all honourable members and the AGSA team and all other stakeholders present, including our support team. Yeah, no, we appreciate the report from the AGSA, though it's quite depressing. Yeah, but we appreciate the good work that you are doing. Just few questions. One, on the issue of the internal audit units and audit committees of these municipalities. Judging from your engagement with them, do you think are they fully capacitated in terms of understanding what is their role, because we shouldn't be here. I think if they were doing their work as properly and as expected. So, judging from your interactions with them, do you think they are fully capacitated in terms of doing their work? Secondly, with the issue of MPEGs also, because municipalities, unlike other state entities, on top of having the internal audit unit and the audit committees, they also have MPEGs, which is an extra oversight office that should be able to assist them. And I know that in most municipalities with more than 40 councillors, their MPEG chairpersons are full-time. The reason being that they should be there full-time so that they are able to fully play an oversight role on issues of annual financial statements, annual reports, audit processes, and all issues that relate to good governance. But now if you find that municipalities, they still find themselves in this kind of a situation while they have MPEGs with their chairpersons that are full-time. Because the implication is that if a chairperson is full-time, it means in terms of remuneration, is remunerated more than other chairpersons of Section 79 committees. Because that person should be there on full-time basis and playing oversight role on this with an administrative support. And they are also allowed to get an external expertise to assist them on all those things. So with this MPEG, do you think there's an issue of, there's a challenge of capacity, maybe in terms of understanding what they are supposed to do, and stuff like that? Thirdly, what kind of support, special support, maybe in this case, do you give to municipalities like this or auditees like this? I mean, if you've got municipalities who are unable to submit annual financial statements for such a long time, I think clearly from your part, I think you should have some kind of a program of supporting them. Is there any kind of support like that you are giving them continuously? Yeah. Fourthly, on the issue of notifications of material irregularities that were issued to accounting officers for failing to submit AFS, I just want to find out when did you do that? And then is it all the 10 mentioned auditees, or it is only the 2, which is Mafube and Taleda, that they still have outstanding AFS to date, or is it the whole 10 that you mentioned? Yeah, lastly, Chair, on the issue of Taleda, because Taleda, I understand it's a municipal entity. It's Tabachwewu Local Economic Development Agency. And when I was reading on the other briefing notes from yourself, I realized that Tabachwewu itself, as a municipality, they did submit their AFS on time, and they were able to finalize all the other corresponding audit matters as scheduled. But the problem is with this entity, which is called Taleda. Now, this entity, which is called Taleda, doesn't have a board. This entity doesn't have a CEO, which is an accounting officer. The financial manager of this entity has just resigned or resigned at some point, meaning you don't have a financial manager. The question would then be, what is the role of Tabachwewu local municipality in assisting this entity? Because this is their entity. they are a parent entity themselves to Taleda. So what is there? If they are able to submit, they are AFS. I'm talking about Tabacho local municipality, but then they are not doing anything in assisting this entity which is theirs in terms of doing that. So in terms of your interaction with the municipality itself, what is their response in relation to that? But secondly, is this entity still functional? Because I don't believe that we can have an entity without a CEO, which is an accounting officer, an entity without a board. Is it still functional, or it's something that was created some years ago and then at some point it collapsed, but in the books it remains as something that is still there? So I'm just wondering is this thing really still functional? Those are my questions, Honorable Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. I'll invite Sharon to also respond, but on the question of internal audit, Chair, I think it's an important question, because if you go back to that accountability ecosystem, both the internal audit functions and the MPACs are elevated in that ecosystem, meaning they've got a critical role to play in ensuring that there's transparency and also accountability all the way up to performance. So there's various things that we have seen in terms of whether they are capacitated adequately or not. It varies, but what we have seen in many of the cases is instances where there are vacancies in the internal audit departments, and those vacancies do end up crippling the assurance function that we expect them to play, that role of assisting with the review of financial statements, assisting with the review of performance information, planning all the way to performance information, and also, most importantly, assisting with the role of ensuring that there's adequate controls, basic controls, that will then mitigate the issues of non-compliance to SCM, because they need to play those very three important functions. So there's various things that we see in terms of whether they are fully capacitated or not. You'll also speak to the issue of the MPAC. And then on the notices, slide 8, Chairperson does indicate which local municipalities have we issued this material irregularity that speaks to non-submission of financial statements. For an example, the question that was asked by Honorable Beasley on Msunduzi. So Msunduzi is not in that list, though they were not concluded on time. It is only the whole list in Free State. If you look at Mafube that you just asked about now, Kopanong, Mohakare, Masilonyane, we had issued MIs that speaks to late submission of financial statements, including Taleda and also including Kogesano. So maybe you can speak, Sharon, in detail, because there's a question that speaks to, fortunately, your local municipality in Free State. Thank you. And MPAC as well.
Thank you so much, Chair. Through you, maybe from the impact side, because one of the things that we were deliberate, especially those in the disclaimer zone in the province of the Free State, we visited we're visiting some of those municipalities, and then we also engage normally with the internal audit, the audit committee that's present, and also with the chair of impact in that municipalities. But overall, Chair, what we have seen, that we've seen a lot of capacitation challenges in those instances, that there is still a lot of work from a capacitation that needs to happen, specifically in the areas from the impact perspective. And I know from the National Treasury perspective, they have sent out guidance to say, if you are part of the impact, this is how you must draft your terms of reference. It's simple things. This is in terms of your roles and responsibility that must happen. And then even from the AGSA office side, we also provide training to that. And when the tabling actually happens of this annual report, we also present to advise them on the matters that we've raised in our audit report. But now, if MPEC is unable to sit because of the financial statements not being submitted, they then cannot perform their oversight role in terms of the annual report, ultimately. That at the end of the day, that direct impact that it has. So what will then happen in these cases with the municipality, and we've shown the trend of the late submissions over the years, the oversight will happen much, much later, as it's supposed to be. So issues that happened 2 years ago, you're then still dealing with the same issues because of the timing issue that happens. But I do agree a lot of capacitation still needs to happen in the area. What we have also seen a lot with the new administration, and I think it's the 3rd year of operation, especially where there is new councillors coming in. So then they need to understand the system, they need to be capacitated. So that in itself also takes some time, first of all. But definitely there's a capacitation issue that needs to be addressed there. Then you were asking, Honourable Chair, just through you, the member was asking about what do AG do in the cases where they don't see the submission of the financial statement. So what we can indicate from our side, so we do then activate the role plays in the accountability ecosystem. There's clear responsibility from a support perspective, from a provincial treasury, from a COCTA, a provincial-wide, national treasury and national COCTA, that they provide supporting mechanisms, and these things are also in their own performance plan, that they've got to provide support to the municipalities. So especially the ones that's struggling, and we find loads of challenges, we also elevated to them to see from their own support programs, how can they actually support these municipalities better? What would make it, from our side, in terms of the interventions that we do, we basically go in instances also to do, in certain instances, status of records review, where we would go in at a specific period of time and do specific work around record management, and then also but we have to then wait for the set of financial statements then to be submitted for audit purposes in this regard. Then I do believe in the case, so I think the member was 100% right in the issue of the leader about the board and the CEO. So currently, I think even if you look at the activities in that entity, there isn't much happening in the entity. Just reflecting on the prior audit report and what was sitting in there in the qualified space. So if you look at those items, it's small amounts sitting in 300,000, 200,000 that they were qualified on, which talks to you about the activities of the entity. There isn't much happening from an activity perspective. So what we have done from our side, we have escalated this to the municipality itself and then to the province to then deal with the submission of the financial statements, because in itself, it's not, there's a lot of operations that is happening, so it shouldn't be something that should be taking yourself so long to complete, because they are in the process of closing the entity, and most probably that is also what's causing delay, because they're closing the entity as there is not much activities happening. The last one I wanted to make, so it was one of the slides of the HOA where she, about the MIs that we've issued for late submission of financial statements or non-submission. So over the years, in 2021, we've issued for that, there was 19, that was outstanding in this, and then for the next year about 15, and then the current year about 13. So those were the total MIs that we've issued for the period, but then based on those MIs that we've issued, we do get responsive where they do submit the financial statements then. Fine.
Thank you. Honourable Skosana, are you covered?
Yeah, well, I think it's my follow-up will be more like a comment,
Sure.
not a question. Like on the issue of MPEC, as much as MPEC plays an oversight role, but then because they should know the calendar of events as to when annual financial statement, when should annual financial statement be submitted, when is the audit process taking place, when are they playing their oversight role on those on the annual report and the annual financial statements. But then they can't just sit and wait for their turn to look at all these things. And then if those things are not coming on time, they just fold their arms and say, Tina, our role is at the end. If those things were not submitted and stuff like that, there's nothing we can do. They should in the process to say, but you know that in terms of the audit cycle processes, at this time we are supposed to be doing this so that you don't inconvenience us, so that as the MPEC also, when it's our time to play oversight role on these things are ready, have been submitted on time. So they do have a role to play also in that particular regard. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Skosana. Honourable Atkinson.
Thanks very much, Chair. A lot of this it's probably rather than a question, more a comment or asking your opinion, and maybe something directed to you as well, Chair. And that's the issue of consequence management. And I think we kind of got the response from the AG about the fact that once, if something bad happens in a municipality, and the council condones it, then there's not a lot you can do apart from going to court. I was quite shocked to hear that, actually. And maybe, Chair, when they put together the legislation or the way that councils operate and everything, everyone assumed that people would be operating in the best interests of the country, the population, or whatever. And what you might well find in certain councils is that there are people there with vested interests in particular projects that go ahead. And they might be implicated, and they might push for the condonement of those things. So, Chair, maybe we should have a word with COGTA or with National Treasury, and maybe we should be looking at something in the legislation that could be changed. That if something is condoned by council but is kind of overturned by the AG, there should be some other method apart from just going to court for this to get investigated, because there does appear to be a little bit of a hole in the law there, and the ability for evil people to get away with bad deeds, basically. So, Chair, I think maybe we need to put our heads together and maybe come up with something for COGTA or National Treasury or whatever, to find some way that if the AG does pick up nefarious deeds that have been said, been condoned by council, that there can be further action taken and potentially consequences against members of the council as well. Rather like the King Commission and the requirements on board members and companies, there should be some way of actually holding councillors to account as well for bad decisions, basically. Basically condoning illegal action. So that's just a thought. I think there's some work for us to do. I don't think we should just leave it. I do think there's a hole there in the law to be plugged. Thanks.
Thanks, Honourable Atkinson. We're going to come back to the next steps once all the members have had an opportunity to ask questions. But yeah, I've noted the point that you've made, and we'll deal with it once the members have asked. Honourable Bila.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues and the AG's office. I just have to comment on the presentation presented to us this morning. Firstly, I want to commend the municipalities in KZN and Eastern Cape for continuing to maintain the submission of an annual financial statement on legislated time. And also encouraging those municipalities in other provinces that if possible, we can have 100% nationally for the submission of AFS. So I have a recommendation, if I can say it so, because we have common delays in all the municipalities for not submitting AFS by legislated time. We know the reasons why. You have indicated it's common in all municipalities. Is it not possible for the office of the AG maybe to bring these municipalities under one roof and try to encourage them, more especially even the MPEC chairpersons, as the, sorry, I wanted to say comrade, as Honorable Skosani has indicated that MPEC chairpersons in some provinces, more especially in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, where I'm coming from, they are full-time in the office. So I just want to recommend that if it is possible for AG, please let us call or bring these municipalities under one roof. Because what we want to achieve, remember, is that all municipalities must comply. We must have 100% compliance in all municipalities that we are having in this country. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Pila. Honorable Maduna.
No, thanks, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Members, I will be short as always. Yeah, I think, Chair, I've seen many of these reports that are similar to this. So, no, Chair. I think one would want to comment on the issue that it happens that they apply for a grant for a particular project and then they don't build a project, they use it for something else. You know, Chair, I usually say, you see in South Africa, that's why they usually say that we have very good policies, oversight and everything. You see, for instance, if you are given a project, AG will correct me, you are given you apply, okay, you identify a particular project through the ITP processes. You then prioritize, the council prioritizes that project and then it goes and apply for funding from MIG, for instance, for that particular project. They are funded for that program. They are given an estimated budget that this will cost you this much. Then you go on the SCM processes, you appoint a person. When you have appointed that person, when you do payment certificates, that is why I've always been very confused. How do these things happen? Because when you process a payment certificate of a project, the person would give you an invoice, the contractor, the consultant. Usually municipalities use consultant because they don't have the capacity. The consultant will verify the work that it has been done. So the first person that is corrupt, that would say the work has been done while it's not done, is a consultant. The payment certificate gets to the municipality, a technician looks at them. Usually they do not have much capacity if you look around in terms of even the qualifications that are required for you to be a technician for you in the engineering field. But being it is made, that was just a comment. They sign it off. They say the payment certificate is correct, Chair. That's the second person. The manager of the department sign it off. And then, before they make a payment, I know that they are supposed to send it to, I forget the name they call it, to province, that expenditure report, before they make the payment. The province must then sign it off and then you make the payment. Now, it confuses me that out of all this process, there's no one who's picking that no, we are no longer doing this project, we are doing something else, not what we would have applied to do with this particular. So it tells you that, Chair, it also concurs with what I've always been saying, that in South Africa, we have sold this notion too much that politicians are corrupt. Yes, to an extent we may agree that they are corrupt, but mostly the problem that we are facing, we have administrators who are corrupt and who are collaborators into every other corruption that is happening. Because you can't tell me that you process a payment certificate in this man, in all this process, there's no one that is picking it up. And then even after you would have made the payment, obviously you would have things like your internal audit that will verify that that payment was made proper and report on it. So all these people can't pick it, that this payment, this project is non-existent, because there are many of them at the local municipalities where you find that the project has, the budget is finished. You look at the work in progress in the AFS, in the balance sheet, you find it's stagnant. But now the problem with accounting is that what happens this side affects what happens this side. The budget this side is continuously decreasing, but the work in progress is not increasing. It tells you that there's no work that is happening there. We are continuing, but we are still continuing. But the asset, you see, so there are too many people, which I think this thing, it goes back to what Honorable Madlala usually say. We need some sort of moral regeneration. Because even the asset person, when you receive a payment certificate, the payment certificate is signed and all that, the budget person as well must approve. So there are many people who are involved in these things. I know we usually say that politicians are corrupt in that municipality. We need to really, really look at officials. They are not doing us well as a country. They are a problem. You see, as soon as the minister was announcing a budget that we are investing this much, into infrastructure development. It's not that easy for our people who want to access these things on the ground. There's set-asides and all those things. When our people must access this, they must pay a particular official in order for them to access these things. So we really need to speak about administrators of our government and the culture in general that is there. We can no longer ignore it. Because I know it has always been easy to just push the blame and say politician, but a politician doesn't award the tender. Even if I can tell you to go in award so-and-so, why would you go in award so-and-so while you know it's wrong? So I thought that is something that we must raise sharply, and then so that when we go forward, Chair, it's something that we need to speak about. How do we morally regenerate the entire and make sure that we change the culture in government to ensure that we run clean government and government that delivers adequately. I think my question is just one. I wanted to check in these municipalities that do not either submit these financial statements or submit them late, do their senior managers get performance bonuses? Because really, from where I stand, I know that you prepare financial statements as in when transactions are happening. You don't wait for the last day of the year and you start preparing FS. Obviously, you will be late. You must prepare and start collecting information or data, making sure that it's accurate, complete, and so on, as in when you prepare the financial, as in when you do these transactions. So I just wanted to check that. Do they get these performance bonuses? Because that's why perhaps we must start. And I think with this AG new given powers, that I think we need to look at these things. That's why we must head them as well. You can't get a performance bonus while you can't submit financial statements. I think, Chair, that was my question. And as a last comment as well, I just wanted to speak on the issue of write-offs. As much as you assisted me by clarifying me that after the council have written it off, it can only be the court that turns that decision. However, Chair, I think I would have as well spoke about this. I think we would need in future to look at something, as much as the process is there in the MFMA in terms of how to investigate it and so on. But I think it leaves a lot to chance, because if you go from municipality to municipality, it's being done differently. Now, the problem with that is that you can't question much, because if you go to other municipalities, you find them there, they have an MPEC researcher, they have someone that is assisting MPEC to deal with these issues. You go to other municipalities, you find that internal audit is doing this investigation. You go to other municipalities, you are surprised that the very same SCM that is being investigated appoints a person to come and investigate them, to perform these investigations. But after the council have written on, like you are saying that, but I'm saying, I think perhaps as a question as well, or that you may comment on, in the process of investigation, for instance, I'm not sure whether it's Regulation 32 or 36, where I could go to a sister entity or a municipality, take their SCM process, use it to appoint in my municipality. Yeah, but that regulation, I'm just not sure which one is it. Now, you find out that at most times, especially in these cities, they go there, they take the same process in these municipalities, the quantity is not the same, the condition is not the same, but they use it, they appoint. And then obviously council will say that no, it was, and then they write it off. But I'm saying in something like that, it tells you that there was an intent. There are too many red flags. So I just want to check what is the tolerance level in terms of AG, where you start to say, in this process there was too much red flags that show that, or that could manifest that there's some corruption, fraud involved. I thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thanks, Honorable Bila and also Honorable Matuna. Maybe on the one comment by Honorable Bila, we welcome that comment. It's more a comment to say, is there room to capacitate various role players in the ecosystem so that they can be able to effectively discharge on their duties? This is what preoccupies us, Chair, currently as a broader call to action by the Auditor General. Because upon drilling deeper to understand the root causes of all these issues that we are talking about, partially the issue of capacitation comes up very strong. And we have taken up a call to action to then, as Honorable Bila puts it, call upon the chairpersons of the MPEX, collaborate with internal audit functions so that their plan can begin to address the things that we are interested in, capacitate the MPEX on how they can effectively discharge on their responsibility. So it's a bigger and a broader call to action in various areas where we now have under the pillar of influence, under the strategic goal of influence in our culture shift strategy, we have got to play a bigger role in capacitating these various role players. And I think that is the major problem statement in South Africa, the capacitation. And then Honorable Maduna said it so well, the issue of ethics. I cannot say it better than you have outlined it, because if you look at the Professionalization Act, it speaks to skills and competency, but then it doesn't end there. It continues and it talks about the need to ensure that the officials that are employed by public sector are ethical and perform their duties with integrity. And that speaks also to the pillar that we are driving within our culture shift strategy, which is a pillar of institutional integrity. So it's going to take many pieces to get the environment right. It will take the capacitation pillar, the skills pillar, and then the ethics pillar as well. Of course, not forgetting the existence of basic controls in the environment. And then on the question of Honorable Matuna, spot on the concern you are raising around these payment certificates for goods. Let me conclude it, for goods that have not been received. So we've been spotlighting quite a lot of these incidents in our material irregularities. Actually, I went and checked the statistics. 20% of material irregularities in the MFMA space are squarely on the procurement and payment of goods and services that have not been received. So I cannot concur with you any further, but we have raised notifications in these cases. On the question of the bonuses by senior managers in the instances where there's no submission of annual financial statements, can we revert back to you, Chair? It's a very interesting one. But what we have been spotlighting and highlighting as an insight over the years, even currently, is that we are picking up a trend where there are no performance contracts in place and there's no performance management system in place that speaks to what they need to deliver for the citizen. So we have been spotlighting that. But I think now the output of it all, because as input, the output of it all is now the performance bonus on the ground. Have we been seeing instances of these payments of performance bonuses? So we will revert on that one. And then Sharon, if you can address this one of borrowing the supply chain process of another entity. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chair, through you. So definitely we have seen that what we call piggyback, yes, piggybacking of contracts. So we have seen that over a number of years where you use the contract of another municipality to then get involved in the procurement process for your municipality. So in that instances, we have reported where the process hasn't been followed appropriately, because for you to piggyback on another contract, first of all, you must make sure that based on the service that you're going to request of is of a similar nature. Nah? And when you basically piggyback, so if, for example, now I've specifically appointed somebody to deliver, for example, accounting services, if I might take that example. So for that amount, for that specific service, there was certain things that you were allocated to. So you can only piggy bank if there's a difference left on the other side. And that's basically how we would audit it and look at it. So there was instances in a lot of municipalities that we have reported non-compliance, that the proper processes hasn't been followed, and hence resulting then in the non-compliance with the supply chain management process and the irregular expenditure. Furthermore, Chair, I think one of the things that we are very deliberate in reporting when we make this assessment and when we look at specific contract, as the HO has indicated, we've got specialists as part of our process, from our performance auditors, from our investigation business unit. So from there, if there's specific fraud risk indicators that we've identified, we would highlight that to management to indicate these are the things that we're concerned of, and those things we would normally report in the management report as such, where we've concerned, where we see something is on towards, where we see, oh, there's certain changes have happened with the actual payment, there's things scratch out. So those are the things that we are very much alert to, and then do report then for follow-up in this regard. But I think that is a part in terms of the piggyback contract that I wanted to comment. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Let me just see that the members are all happy. Only you, Honorable Madlala, haven't asked anything. Are you good? Oh, you just have a tiny one. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. I no, I thought you wanted to hide. I thought you wanted to hide, given the information earlier. Yeah, he's been making calls to Tabacho to say, listen, you guys are embarrassing me here. What's going on there?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I could sit here for another 45 minutes to talk about home, Tabacheu, but let's just not go there. Yeah, perhaps one day I'll convince the committee that we should go on an oversight there. It will be first prize for me. Chair, no, I just have a very small one because lots has been said by my learned colleagues, and I think most of the issues that the AG has highlighted has also been covered in terms of the MIs, in terms of the MA, and you guys too have been great in terms of your feedback. So I just want to ask, there are a number of municipalities that are declared as dysfunctional, if I'm correct, okay? Now, I'd just like you to educate me, because my other colleagues are much more smarter than I am. So if you could just educate me in terms of how is the AGSA's office now approaching these dysfunctional municipalities? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable. Good question. So we are working very closely with the Minister of COGTA. There is a ministerial committee that the President has now formed, consisting of various members. COGTA is part of that committee, Treasury. We are also part and parcel of that committee, where we are now together collaborating in ensuring that the interventions that COGTA, because it's COGTA who's responsible for identifying the dysfunctional municipalities in line with Section 47 of the MSA Act. Once they've identified these dysfunctionals, then what are the interventions that need to be implemented? So there is that close collaboration that we are beginning to see actually in this new government between us and them in ensuring that there is a solution around this. Yeah, but we've got a process, of course, internally, Chair, if I may just add, where we've got a model that we call a continuum model as part and parcel of the culture shift strategy, where we categorize local municipalities in terms of which category they belong in. So there's various categories, from doing harm category, doing the basics, all the way to doing good category. So we have also categorized many of the municipalities to belong in the doing harm category. And once they are identified in that category, there is then different action plans that we come up with to ensure that we work very closely with them. But what we have also collaborated with COGTA on is that the list of the doing harms and the list of what COGTA tracks as dysfunctional is almost the same. Actually, ours is even much more, but at least there is a correspondence in the list of what they are tracking as dysfunctional and what we have also categorized as those municipalities that are doing harm. So we are working now hand in hand in ensuring that the recommendations that we raise speak to the root causes that we would have identified.
Thank you. And then we'll go to Honorable Madlala and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the colleagues. I will take probably 2 minutes. Well, the first part, I think we should, we'll welcome the report. I think that's standard. You guys are not the problem. The problem is politicians and administrators. Contrary to Honorable Madonna, I want to.
Sorry, Chair, I apologize. Honorable Malala yesterday was very happy to congratulate the RAF on the great job they're doing. Please, will you congratulate the AG's office also?
Please ignore Honorable Madlala.
No,
Keep moving.
it's quite okay. Congratulations, guys, on the job you are doing. I think it did not sit well that we congratulated RAF. No problem. So I'm saying that, Chair, sitting here, I would want to think that we've generated enough information from the sample size of municipalities that has been presented before us. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that we should be listening to more of these individual cases. Because like I've said before, the problems can easily be generalized. Once you have a sample that is sizable and you can see the patterns, the issues, you can simply generalize that this is generally the problem. These are the underlying sources of it. And maybe then we need to have a national discussion around it and say what radical policy shift do we need? What is meet the Minister of COGTA, what are their plans in terms of addressing these issues, which can be simply stratified and quantified properly? Because they are all similar issues and they range around the number of issues that have been mentioned, around moral issues. I don't even think regulation. I've maintained that you can't regulate to restore moral authority and conduct. You may put as many regulations as you want. I also still don't believe it's around capacity. I've said it before. I think it's an issue of institutionalized corruption, of people engaged on a full-time job to find strategies to evade doing the right thing, you know. And I think at some point we may need to, because the hierarchy of governance is that the power is with the people. The people are the final arbiters. They vote. They don't vote for a municipal manager or city manager. They vote for a political party to govern a particular environment. That political party, through its deployees to EXCO, appoints a municipal manager and has a responsibility of playing oversight and of monitoring performance in line with its mandate that it had drawn from the people. So we can't detach the political party from the failures of a municipality or non-compliance and failures to deliver financial statements or deliver on the projects of the municipality and absolve it as just a standalone, you know. So maybe at some point we need to really be blunt and say these ANC municipalities are not delivering financial statements. These DA municipality or whatever, whoever is in municipalities, be specific so that we can also give the parties a sense that if you don't do it, those who are the final arbiters who deployed you must know it, so that they must also make a decision of what to do with your conduct. Because at the end of the day, what capacity does this committee or parliament have to change the entire moral fiber of the environment? Because leadership is at the center of it. And if leadership has no willingness, I don't think that there's much that we can do. But obviously we can't fold hands in between. So that's why I'm saying maybe as a suggestion, we need to package these problems across the local government sphere. And, you know, I hate these things of conferences after conferences every time there are problems, because you waste more money, but find a space where we can get all the parties in a room around the country and say, generally across, we establish that there's a moral issue, there is a non-compliance issue, there's a high appetite for consequence management, a low appetite for performance. So what should we do? How do we change the policies in such a way that we can punish these kind of behaviors, and obviously in the adverse of it, ensure that we promote good behaviors, but do it in a manner that has a sense of agency? Because I really have a feeling that this discussion probably has over a decade happening. I was not here, but I have a feeling that it's going to have another 30 decades or 2 or 3 decades going forward. And I think that's the culture again in the country that we have. You know, unless if we just want to sit here and appear as if we're doing something, and we'll go on oversight next week, we'll come back the other week, and 3 months down the line, someone would have been fired, someone comes in, does the same thing. But the people on the ground continue suffering. We don't do enough to even make them aware of the effects of these issues on their daily lives. So they look at it as, no, those ones on TV are just talking. We are poor, born poor, we're fine. That side. So we'll go back and vote the same organization, like how your people do in the Eastern Cape. And then we are not moving forward as a society. Maybe we need to really find a way, a radical approach to this matter, which can be measurable, to say within a space of a year, this is what we agreed in 2025 for during the 7th administration, that are going to be areas of policy that we change, part of public participation, because the public must work with us in terms of punishing municipalities and political parties that are leading municipality where they are not playing the right oversight. Because if the people at the end of the day don't want to punish that, if they've embraced it as the kind of leadership that they want to have, who are we to then change it? We must accept it. But we must have done enough to ensure that the people are aware that, look, these people that you keep on trusting with your lives have taken so much money and they're not accounting for it. You decide. If you want to go back and vote for them, well, there's nothing we can do. We can't coerce you. We're not in a dictatorship kind of a society. But if you decide to punish them, we must give you all the information as this committee. And I think maybe that may have some impact. The approach we are taking, I think it's quite exhausting and seems like we're going around in circles. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Madlala. So I am not certain that the committee is allowed to make party political conclusions in the context of Parliament. Although I get the point you are driving at, but I think the whole purpose of these proceedings being public, and I'm going to deal with your issue substantively because it is important, the substance of your input, that the whole purpose of these proceedings being public and the care that I take to break down the jargon and ask clarification questions is so that people may see this for themselves and then hopefully ask the questions about who is in charge in Laingsburg, I think it's Laingsburg, who's in charge in Tabachu and so on, and make conclusions accordingly. But that said, the first thing I want to do is to thank the AGS team. I think this has been a rich conversation for me, and I think for the committee members, I think we agree. The thing about these slide presentations is that we often don't have the color. And you were able to transport us and give us a sense of what's going on and what it is that you experience and so on. And it's given us food for thought in terms of what we then must do together with you and other arms of government in order to start tackling these problems that you're dealing with. Because it must also be incredibly frustrating to deal with the same issues year after year, it's the same thing. You just want to take the recording from last year and just play it to the same officials and then say, now give me an answer, and save yourself the effort of speaking. So we appreciate how frustrating it must be. But also sometimes all of us believing that the AG can make all the difference. The Auditor General's office can make all the difference. They can intervene, do X, Y, Z. Ultimately, as Honorable Madlala says, people are elected to take decisions and to account for those decisions. And ultimately, when improvements need to be made, it is those people that must do the work. with the assistance of the Auditor General and so on. But ultimately, it is the elected representatives who must do their work, and that applies to us as this committee. So we can't keep calling you here and asking you, what are you going to do about it? We must now say what needs doing, which is the, but thank you very much. This is the next point that I'm going to deal with the committee. And I am going to give a longish closing, unlike Honorable Maduna, because I just need to maybe attempt to set out a way forward, but also invite the members to give some thought to certain things I'm going to put on the table, given that the committee will have a strategy session at some point in the near future in line with the plans of Parliament, because that session will help us deal with some of what I call systemic issues as well throughout the government. I think on the immediate, we don't only need to be seen to be doing something, we actually have to do something substantive. And what I'd like the members to just give some thought to, and we can have a discussion further when we are all on oversight together, most of us, and then come and conclude here, is that there appears to be failure at several levels. The first is at municipal level, both at a political institutional level, that is the council, and also at administrative level. Then there appears to be failures to varying degrees at provincial level, at the level of the MEC and the MEC for finance. And that escalates up to National Treasury already being sideways. And what I think we must consider is where we start. I think we must generally try and avoid trying to do the work of the MEC for finance and the MEC for local government at various levels. However, I think we have the opportunity to hold them to account to specifics, to specific issues of financial management or mismanagement and loss of money to the state and so on. So I'd like to invite the members to just maybe let this presentation percolate. We can discuss it, like I said, on oversight. We'll have lots of time together just to think through what we need to do. Ultimately, though, we need to, in short order, and before the end of the next term, basically, to have had meaningful interactions in this committee with the provincial executive members, as well as the councils concerned. We need to find a formula in which we're going to do it, and we can ask Parliament to support us. It's not a lot of municipalities that are concerned here. And I know that we've got a workload of other councils, metros, and so on that we've placed on the agenda of the committee. But let us please find a way of having conversations immediately or as soon as possible with those entities, so that we can also go back to Parliament and report to the Speaker and say, this is what we've done. I will inform the Speaker that we are actively responding to that letter that she received from the AG, and that we will then set out a plan of how we're going to be dealing with the issues that have been raised, so that next year the picture begins to look different. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is more long-term, and it deals with matters that we've dealt with over time in committee, as well as other discussions outside of this committee, which are really important. So I have had several discussions across the board. I think all of us met with the presidency, for example, and we spoke about these performance monitoring and evaluation issues and so on. Haven't forgotten that discussion. We are going to go back to it. You will also remember that I've spoken about bringing the National Treasury here to speak to the committee right across the state, national government, provincial government, all the way to local government. What they have done is a detailed review through the Government Technical Advisory Center, or something, GTEC, that is called, together with other areas of the government, DPME in the presidency and so on. They've done very detailed expenditure reviews, going back years. And those expenditure reviews, and I've looked at some of the underlying information, because they said it's not ready. I said, please just send me some of the spreadsheets so that I can have a sense of what is in there, and they did. They've looked at expenditure reviews in detail through meaningful samples. I think it was you, Honorable Madlala, or Honorable Maduna, I cannot remember, but you referred to samples. They've done this sampling. It's very detailed sampling across departments, across local government, provinces, different areas of procurement, different management issues, and so on. And they've identified specifically where the government is losing money and what some of the problems in terms of executive accountability are, etc., etc. So, for example, even ministers will say to the DG of Treasury, why am I paying so much for flights? And then he has to say, it's your travel agency, you chose them, you fire them if the flights are too expensive. So there are instances where even the executive authorities are seemingly unaware that they can change what is going on. So I'm mentioning the National Treasury to say we are going to get very detailed information. I have spoken to the Public Service Commission, Professor Figeni specifically, about coming to the committee and the School of Government, about coming to the committee to speak to the issues that Honorable Madlala is speaking to, Honorable Maduna has raised, Honorable Skosana has raised similar issues, and I think Honorable Atkinson has raised similar issues about the quality of the person we have in government. And one of the things that I have been told, I think it was Professor Fiken who did, is that it's the concept of a common ethos right across the government. There are countries where if you have not been through the School of Government, you're just not going to be appointed to certain roles. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to take someone off the street who doesn't understand the Constitution, doesn't understand the PFMA, the MFMA, and our political system as a whole, and how we account and why we need to account, and you place them in a board of an SOC. There have been boards of SOC where everybody has no familiarity whatsoever with the Public Finance Management Act, and all of them are on the board. They've got skills, they are chartered accountants, they're lawyers, they're all of these things, but the system that holds government together and accountable, they don't understand it. And so these might seem abstract, and I would beg your patience, honorable members and the Auditor General, and I've spoken to the Auditor General about these aggregated information sets. This is so that we know which patterns to target as the committee so that our work is very focused. Secondly, we know which areas to focus on in order to move the needle the most. Third, in order to place ourselves in a position where we have a different strategic conversation with the presidency and with members of the executive, ministers and the like. Last, we are able to make specific legislative proposals to Parliament and to the executive, so that we begin to see legislative changes that are going to make a difference. So we will have this discussion in our stretch session properly. But I just want to say thank you very much. It's all these issues the committee gets seized with on a regular basis. But in this instance, we are going to leave this room and go out and do things right now, because it's important that when the Auditor General sends a letter, it's important to our constitutional order that when the Auditor General sends a letter to Parliament, to the Speaker, a committee like ours does something as soon as possible, and that soon thereafter there is a report or a letter to the Speaker that says this is what we're doing specifically, and soon thereafter the South African people can see that we are there attending to the problem. That will restore confidence in the democratic system and the work of Parliament, and we can assure you in South Africans that we really intend to do this, and we will look at our program and how we can make adjustments so that we take this up seriously and we're able to send a letter back to the AG to say, this is what we've done, this is what Parliament is going to do, this is what we've discussed with the executive, this is what's going to happen, let's talk again in the next financial year to see, or please update us in terms of what is happening. So I want to thank you, honorable members and the Auditor General team. So we are adjourned. Thank you. Members, can I just beg your indulgence? And the AG team is released. We are going on oversight. We have sent the oversight program. Can we spend 10 minutes together? Just an AG team, you can leave if you have, if you must. Just to whip through the program, for the team to whip through the program, so that we can ask any questions we have, and then we know we're ready. Thank you. That's fine. We'll send you videos and pictures.